All right, people. It's good to be back on. Obviously, slightly different sentence than what you guys are used to in London, anyway. That is because we've recently moved flats and we officially moved in here yesterday. This is the first vid. So, mic, studio light, and all that is in the bedroom. I'm just waiting for someone to come over, essentially to just get it shaped, so to speak, that it looks kind of similar to the old one. So for now, we're using the Rode mic and we're in the living room, right? But look, we're still going. We got to talk about Chisora versus White, or rather the fact about the breakdown of Chisora versus White, because I'm seeing numerous sources, including IFL TV, say the following, that Chisora versus White talks for December 13th have broken down and it reportedly now not take place on December 13th in Manchester, with Chisora off the card completely. It's unsure whether Queensbury will still go ahead with the Manchester show or not. We're going into, a whirlwind of detail. This card has seemed cursed from the get-go because it was announced originally it was going to be Moses Thelma headlining, and we were hearing opponents like Hughie Fury. Apparently he's going to be fighting in Rotterdam. I thought it was Rotterdam in the UK. No, it's Rotterdam in the Netherlands. He's going to be fighting Michael Webster. They were saying it was going to be a big fight in December. Yeah, Michael Webster, that's real big, isn't it? It really isn't. I mean, that's the guy who Solomon Dakers beat twice. Seriously. So he's fighting him. Michael Hunter is fighting at the York Hall against someone. I don't know, that's literally, I don't know who he's fighting. Cooper Pulev is fighting Morak Kasiev. What's the guy's name? Jermaine Franklin isn't fighting him. Don't know why. And then Jarrell Miller is pricing himself out. So Moses Thelma is likely scrapped from that card. Then it was all the rage. Chisora's going to have his 50th and final fight, final out in the Manchester, the last dance, etc., etc., etc. Who is it going to be against? We were hearing Zhilei Zhang. Apparently Zhilei Zhang, Team Zhang signed the contract and they were happy with what they were getting for this fight. So it was going to be Zhilei Zhang. Nope. Then it was going to be Jarrell Miller. Apparently, he was keen to have this fight. Apparently there was real big talks ongoing that we were going to get this fight announced. No. Then we're hearing actually David Hay was the one who originally said that it's going to be Dillian Whyte. It's going to be Dillian Whyte, and that they're going to be having the trilogy fight. And people at the time were like, well, it's David Hay, he does say things, but who appears last week? Derek Chisora. Who else appeared? Dillian Whyte. Are they in the middle between the two of them? Is this fight going to happen? And Chisora says, once, I'm paraphrasing, but once I get things my way. Now, there was talk that this was going to be a pay-per-view event. It certainly won't be a pay-per-view event now. If Chisora's off the card, and even if they do find an opponent for a Thelma, who we're hearing may very well be off this card, it's unlikely that you can't pay-per-view. It's not going to be pay-per-view. It's as simple as that, right? I know I haven't heard it from anybody, but just common sense would tell you, you can't put this show on pay-per-view. You can't do that. It doesn't make any sense. Now with Chisora off it completely, it's going to push back his retirement until sometime next year, you would imagine. Well, definitely next year. Whether the car is going to get scrapped completely. I had heard rumours for fights that were going to be on the undercard. Now, I wouldn't necessarily... If some of the fights that were on the undercard, they could headline a show. Don't know if they'd headline in the co-op. You might need a smaller venue, but they could headline a show, definitely. So if they do that, then it'll have to be Standard Zone, which, again, it's a show before Christmas. It's not the end of the world. But, for me, I just think that this whole date, December the 13th, if it was on a Friday, you'd say it was cursed because it's on a Saturday. The whole Chisora thing, look, I've no doubt in my mind that Derek Chisora is looking, because this is his last fight, because he probably wants to be in the main event, and maybe there is still talk that a Tell may feature, which I don't think he will, to be honest with you, at this point. But with Chisora wanting to be in the main event, with everything that's going on, for me, it just comes across that, all right, Chisora's wanting an absolute Hail Mary amount of money, and probably more money than the show is actually going to generate. Well, definitely more money than the show is going to generate. And Frank Warren is probably looking at this thinking, right, well, if I'm going to be paying you what you want, because it seems to be all Chisora. You've Dillian Whyte saying he's happy, you've Zhilei Zhang saying he's happy, and you've Chisora openly on air saying, no, until I get things my way. That tells me that Derek Chisora, he's driving a hard bargain, let's just say it like that. He's driving a very, very hard bargain. So that tells me that they're looking at this thinking, right, how much of a loss are we willing to take, right? What are we going to have to do to make this show feasible in order to pay Chisora what he wants? We're going to have to put it on pay-per-view. If we put it on pay-per-view, then you're opening up another can of worms. you know, who is going to be on the undercard? You know, how much do we actually have for the show as a whole? Because they put Chisora, or they put Parker versus Wardley on pay-per-view. Although that was a really, really good fight, should the card have been on pay-per-view? Absolutely not. The co-main event was an absolute disgrace. That's one of the worst co-main events I've ever seen between two fighters. No one knew who the hell they were. They should have put Ezra Taylor versus Steve Woodall on his co-main, because even though it was technically not as high stakes on the line like an OBO title, it was still, they're more known than those two guys. I've forgotten who they are already, those two guys. And I'm sure they're probably looking at that thinking, you know what, we can do this pay-per-view, but do we really want to be doing all of these? And I would imagine no, because that's how many pay-per-views now. There's a pay-per-view last week, it's a pay-per-view not next week, the following week, then another one after that. And then apparently there would be, we don't know what's going to happen with the Riyadh season show for Naomi Inoue. Maybe, seriously, could that be on, it's Turkey, who knows? Could that be on pay-per-view? Who knows? So there's a lot of pay-per-views being chucked around, and maybe Frank or whoever just decided, you know what, we'll only put this on pay-per-view if it's absolutely viable. And obviously what Chisora is asking for, he drives a hard bargain. Chisora's always done that. You remember him in the ring when David Haye wanted him to fight Joe Joyce all those years ago? When Joe Joyce was literally just turned pro. David Haye came in on one of the Matchroom shows and was like, fight Joe Joyce. Fight him, I think, on the undercard of Bellew Haye 2. And Chisora is there negotiating in the ring, saying, I won't fight for anything less than this, that, and the other. He was right. He was only being offered a couple of $100,000. He ended up fighting Carlos Takam, beating him, and then fighting Dillian Whyte on pay-per-view, and then he was still able to carry things on. So Chisora is able to, Chisora more often than not gets what he wants. But I think with this one, it's a real case of you wanted too much. I know it's your last fight, but, you know, how much is enough? So that appears to be the situation with Derek Chisora. We're not going to get this fight, it would seem. Now, for me, I didn't hate this fight. I know some people were saying, don't want to see it, they're both washed. Well, that's kind of why I did want to see it at the end of the day, because I thought the build-up would be good fun. I thought that in the fight itself would be entertaining. Are they both washed? Yes, they definitely are both washed. But what's worse is, like, I would rather see two guys who are both washed, if they're both near the end of their careers, just fight each other and then be done with it. What's worse is you go and you fight a Moses Atelma, like Dillian Whyte did, and you get completely blown out of the water. You go and fight a Richard Torres. You go and fight an F.A. Ajagba. You go and fight these guys who are in their prime, and they're going to beat the living crap out of you. It's not even going to be competitive. I don't really want to see that. Whereas both guys near the end fighting each other, all right. It's a bit of a nostalgia kind of thing, because we had the rivalry for 10 years. Well, 10 years ago. Had their first fight in 2016, or their second fight in 2018. Yeah, let's do it. So for me, I didn't mind this fight. I thought it would be, a fun little outing before Christmas. What they're talking about doing here is just like, meh. I'm just like, nah. So those are my thoughts on that. Let me know yours in the comment section below. As always, people, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you could, smash the like button, hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. And people, until next time. Hope you enjoy the, the living room will only be for watch-alongs moving forward. Hopefully in the next few days I can get the home studio put back in. But until then, peace.